If you are looking for the best pre-built gaming PC 2022, then you've come to the right place. Hi, welcome back to PC Builder. I'm Jason. Now, I'm super excited for this best pre-built gaming PC 2022 buying guide and specific product recommendations at 1080p, 1440p, and 4K gaming. Now, whether you're looking for a high-performance pre-built gaming PC to play something like Call of Duty Warzone, a mid-range pre-built gaming PC to dominate in Fortnite, or a budget pre-built gaming PC to play some Roblox, we've got you covered. And for those of you who also want the best pre-built gaming PC for streaming or video editing, we'll make specific product recommendations for you as well. If you get value out of the video, please give it a big like because it makes a huge difference to the channel. And with that, let's jump into our buying guide for best pre-built gaming PC 2022. Where do you even buy the best pre-built gaming PC? It seems like there's so many confusing choices, so let's clear them up, starting off with a critical difference between buying a pre-built from an original equipment manufacturer, or OEM for short, and a system integrator, or SI for short. Do they matter to you as somebody who just wants to buy the best pre-built gaming PC? They actually do. OEMs are companies like Dell, HP, Lenovo, Acer. These companies actually manufacture their own parts, or at least have their parts manufactured in a branded way. So for instance, when you go to buy a Dell pre-built gaming PC, you're actually going to get the Dell version of most of the parts, including things like the graphics card or motherboard, rather than a recognizable board partner like MSI or Gigabyte that you would typically buy off the shelf and put into a custom PC that either you built or somebody else built for you. On the other hand, the system integrators take universally available parts from the DIY PC market and build a PC. So for instance, a system integrator like Skytech will take a graphics card from MSI, a motherboard from Gigabyte, and a power supply from Seasonic and assemble them into a PC. But they actually don't manufacture anything, and all those parts are universal. Why does this matter? Because OEMs often have proprietary parts that are specifically designed for their builds, which you can't necessarily pull out and use in a different PC build. While you will be able to upgrade the graphics card just by putting in a new one, upgrading other components might be much more challenging. But upgrading a PC assembled by a system integrator using standard off-the-shelf parts should be entirely upgradable. So just know that there's basically two kinds of buyers here. If you are the kind of buyer who just wants to turn on your pre-built gaming PC, have it game, and be awesome without wanting to tear it apart or upgrade specific components, then you can buy from either an OEM or a system integrator. On the other hand, if you're the kind of person who will want to tinker with their PC, you're going to want to pull it apart, you're going to want to put in a new CPU cooler, move it to a new PC case, put in more memory, then I would recommend you buy something from a system integrator instead. As we go through the best pre-built gaming PC 2022 recommendations, I'll let you know whether or not the PC is an OEM or SI PC. So should you buy a pre-built gaming PC or a custom-built gaming PC? Now there's a difference between the two. A custom-built PC, you get to select every single component from a list of components that are available to that system integrator. And in a pre-built gaming PC, the system integrator creates a standard build list depending on what parts they have available. A pre-built gaming PC might list, for instance, that you're going to get a B550 motherboard, but may not specify the exact model and manufacturer, though some do. In a custom configured PC from someone like Origin PC, iBuyPower, or CyberPower, you get to choose, say, a B550 Taichi motherboard by ASRock, but you're now relying much more on your knowledge of exactly what parts go well together, and they do tend to charge quite a bit more for that level of customization. So what's the better value? Well, if you feel confident in your knowledge of being able to select specific parts, for instance, properly pairing a CPU with an adequately powered graphics card, and you don't mind paying the price premium, then a custom build might be right for you. But I believe that for the vast majority of buyers, pre-built gaming PCs offer significantly better price to performance at every budget level, and that's what I recommend. Of course, you can't get the best pre-built gaming PC 2022 if you don't get the right graphics card, also called a GPU, to play at the gaming resolution that you want to play at. So I'm going to break out all the product recommendations that are down in the video description by 4K capable pre-built gaming PCs, 1440p capable pre-built gaming PCs, and 1080p pre-built gaming PCs. And obviously anything that can play at 4K can also play at 1440p at higher frame rates or FPS. and so on and so forth. Just know that some games are easier to run than others. For instance, a gaming PC that easily runs Fortnite, pretty easy to run, at 1440p, might need to be turned down to 1080p for a more demanding title like Call of Duty Warzone or Halo Infinite. For a 4K pre-built gaming PC, I recommend you get at least an NVIDIA GeForce RTX 3070 or AMD Radeon RX 6800 graphics card or better. For 1440p resolution, I recommend a pre-built gaming PC with at least an NVIDIA RTX 3060 or AMD Radeon RX 6600 XT or better. And for 1080p, I recommend you get a pre-built gaming PC with an NVIDIA GTX 1650 Super, not the non-Super, GTX 1660, 1660 Super or Ti, or RTX 2060. Or on the AMD side, an RX 6000 series GPU. Note that Intel has begun making dedicated graphics cards, and they are coming to market in the first quarter of 2022, but at the time of this video, I don't have any info on them. When they do come out, I will list pre-built gaming PCs with Intel graphics cards based on their performance in the links below. Very quick warning, because of the ongoing silicon and graphics card shortage, there are a lot of pre-built PCs right now where OEMs or SIs are just putting in absolute garbage tier graphics cards that are either ancient or way too low performance, and they're selling them as pre-built gaming PCs. You are going to regret buying these. They're going to have extraordinarily poor performance, and you're going to wonder what the heck you just spent your money on. Yes, they are going to be a little bit cheaper, but you will have burned your money instead of saved your money. These garbage graphics cards include the GT710, GT730, and the GT1030, and things like the RX 550 and RX 560. I just want you to avoid the garbage graphics cards. You want something that's at least one of the graphics cards I've already mentioned. So what CPU do you need to have the best pre-built gaming PC 2022? Well, because CPUs have gotten so fast over the last couple of years, as long as you get a modern one, it really doesn't matter in terms of FPS, except at the ultra high end of graphics cards like the RTX 3080 or RX 6800 XT. Everyone else, a modern 6-core or greater CPU is fine for mid-range gaming, and modern 4-core CPUs are okay for budget 1080p gaming. The absolute highest performance CPUs are the Ryzen 5000 CPUs with an X in their name, like the Ryzen 5600X, and 12th generation Intel CPUs like the i5-12600K. Just below that are the Ryzen 5000 CPUs with a G in their name, like the Ryzen 5600G, the Ryzen 3000 CPUs like the Ryzen 3600, and Intel 11th and 10th generation CPUs like the i5-11400 or i5-10400. Note that if you are doing a lot of core-heavy production work in addition to gaming, like video editing, Blender animation, or other professional type work, I would recommend getting an 8-core CPU or higher. Now let's talk CPU cooling and case airflow, because the worst thing that can happen is getting a great pre-built gaming PC and having it thermally throttle your performance because of a weak CPU cooler or bad case airflow. Now CPU cooling, it's a bit complicated, so here's a very simple guidance. For 4 and 6 core Ryzen CPUs and Intel CPUs that don't have a K in their name, low profile downdraft style coolers are generally fine. For 8 core and bigger CPUs and the Intel CPUs that do have a K in their name, at a minimum, we want to see at least a budget tower air cooler or 120mm liquid all-in-one cooler, also called an AIO. For CPUs with more cores, we want to see at least a 240mm AIO liquid cooler or a big air cooler. Though liquid coolers are far more common because it seems the AIO liquid coolers do better during the shipping process than the big air coolers, which can shear off. In terms of case airflow, you want to be able to actually see where the air is going to get into the PC and how the hot air is being exhausted out. Side slits on the case are okay-ish, but we'd really like to see mesh front panels or glass with a significant air gap. And we'd love to see at least 2 to 3 intake fans along with one exhaust fan. Remember, you can get good airflow along with good aesthetics like RGB, so don't settle for a PC that won't perform the way it should. How much memory do you need for gaming? And how fast should the memory be in the best pre-built gaming PCs? Now this is a little easier. If you're just gaming, you want 16 gigabytes of memory, and you want to have it dual channel, which means that you have 2 memory sticks, not just one. Now this amount of memory should be fine for things like basic gameplay, streaming to a service like Twitch, light video editing, render work, or other production tasks. For heavier non-gaming workloads though, I would recommend at least 32 gigabytes of memory. However, you don't typically find a pre-built gaming PC with 32 gigabytes until at least the $2,500 or higher price point. But if you do buy from a system integrator, you can always upgrade the memory by either buying an identical kit to the one it comes with, or buying a brand new 2x16 gigabyte kit instead. On the other side of the equation, for ultra budget pre-built gaming PCs under $900 right now, you're probably going to get stuck with a single 8 gigabyte stick of memory in an OEM pre-built. Now that should be enough for most games at low settings, but upgrading the memory will offer a significant performance boost. And the best way to do that is going to be buying an identical stick to the one it came with. Now, memory speed is a tricky subject. I recommend getting at least 3000 speed memory. That seems to be somewhat common on the pre-built market. I really like 3200 speed, and while less common, kits up to 3600 speed can be found on the higher end systems. Intel systems with 11th and 10th generation CPUs are fine as long as they use at least a B560 or Z series motherboard, which allows for faster memory. Okay, let's jump into the best pre-built gaming PC 2022 product recommendations. Remember, links to everything is down in the video description. And remember that we will continue to update that list of best deals every couple of days, because in 2022, things go out of stock, and of course, better deals do come up. So check that list early and often for the latest deals. All right, let's start out at the very top end of 4K. One of the absolute monster gaming and honestly creator PCs that you can get as a pre-built right now is the Skytech Prism 2. That's just kind of a generic name that they use for a number of high-end setups. This particular one, we've got a Ryzen 9 5950X. That's a 16-core, 32-thread, absolute beast of a processor, and an RTX 3090 with a 1 terabyte NVMe Gen 4 SSD, 32 gigs of fast memory, which is 3600, a 1000-watt power supply, they don't tell you which one, and a 360 millimeter all-in-one liquid cooler. But overall, if you're looking for something absolutely screams at 4K, this is it. And this is the best of the best. This is the absolute best you're going to be able to get, both in terms of the processor right now, as well as the graphics card. I assume that they are going to soon begin putting in 12th generation Intel builds in these as well. But right now they're primarily Ryzen, and they do have a couple with 11th gen Intel, but I would steer you away from the 11th gen Intel in favor of these. I really do like the case on this one as well. It's got a ton of airflow for it. They do populate it with a lot of fans. Overall, for $4,400, we recently built a very, very similar PC, and it still cost us, with all the parts and doing all the labor ourselves, it still costs us about $4,200. So you can see you're still getting a really incredible value once you take into account they're going to warranty all of these parts and they're going to assemble it and ship it to you. Skytech does offer the Prism 2 in a number of different configurations. We've got one here which is an AMD Ryzen 5800X and an RTX 3080 Ti. This is primarily more if you're just gaming focused. 16 gigs of relatively fast memory, the same all-in-one liquid cooler, same Wi-Fi, all of that kind of goodies for $3,500. So it's a significant discount. You don't get the super high-end processor. You don't necessarily need it if you're just gaming, unless you want absolute best of the best. One thing I will note on Amazon is that you often see these coupons here where you can check this box to save an additional $200. So not only is this is not $3,500, this is actually $3,300. All you have to do is check this little box. In the video description, I will put with coupon if there's a coupon there, just to remind you to check it before you buy the PC. Of course, Skytech offers a number of different case configurations. The Skytech Siege is one of them. This is with a Ryzen 7 5800X and an AMD RX 6900 XT, which is AMD's highest end GPU right now. And it comes with 16 gigabytes of memory, Gen 4 SSD, power supply, 360 millimeter all-in-one liquid cooler, all of those kinds of goodies for a significantly discounted price of $2,600. So this is actually one you could look at that is a really good, super high-end 4K gaming value, or of course you could play at super high frame rates at 1440p as well. Now let's jump over to another 4K capable gaming PC, but this time an Intel 12th Gen. Now Intel 12th Gen is codenamed Alder Lake, recently came out, really good performance on them, very competitive with the Ryzen 5000 lineup, and ABS, which is Newegg's in-house Prebuilt Gaming PC brand, they have been among the first to put them in Prebuilt Gaming PCs. And generally, I will say that ABS offers a very good quality, similar to Skytech in terms of manufacturer, and the parts that they put together make a lot of sense. So this is an i7-12700KF with an RTX 3080, 32 gigabytes of relatively fast memory, 3200 megahertz, and a 1 terabyte PCIe Gen 4 NVMe SSD. One of the things I really like about these, and in addition, they also use a lot of all-in-one liquid coolers, which I really appreciate. Apparently they ship much better than the very large air cooler you would otherwise have to use on this. And they look really nice too. And it's just they provide a lot of cooling. But the great thing about ABS is that they will go into great detail about exactly what parts you're going to get. They don't just say you're going to get a Z690 motherboard. They say you're going to get the Asus TUF Gaming Z690 plus Wi-Fi. That is a specific model of motherboard you're going to get. And you can look up all the specs for that. Similar with the cooler here, you're not just going to get any RGB cooler, although sometimes they are more generic about it, but in this case, you're going to get the Corsair Hydro H115i Elite Capitalix. This is a very, very nice all-in-one liquid cooler. So for $2,900 and a little bit less, these are really, really phenomenal PCs. Of course, there are OEM options as well, and one of them that I actually like a lot better because of a recent change that they made is the HP Omen lineup, particularly through Best Buy. I like buying through Best Buy because they're a reputable retailer, and anytime I've ever had a problem with anything, they generally go ahead and take care of it. But let's look at the HP Omen Ryzen 5800X and RTX 3080 PC for just $2,100. That is an incredible price, and honestly, until recently, they weren't selling for this. Now let's go over, there are a couple of different HP Omen models. They don't really have, I really like the ones with this side airflow grill, and you can see the illuminated fan here. This is called their 30L case. The 25L case, I'm just gonna be really blunt, is nothing but a microwave, and I would not buy anything except a very low-end PC that doesn't generate a lot of heat out of it. I would definitely not put high-end components in it. However, these cases do provide pretty good airflow. And the other thing I like is they are going to use, it is only 120 millimeter all-in-one liquid cooler, but they do use a liquid cooler here for the 5800X. They have substantial looking heat sinks on the VRMs for the motherboard. Those are these right here. Overall, really, really good performer, but remember, you are going to get an OEM motherboard. The change that they made recently that I do really like is in the BIOS for the motherboard, if you want to go switch the memory in a lot of OEM pre-builts, it won't recognize what are called XMP profiles for a lot of off-the-shelf memory kits. That's a bummer because that makes it very, very difficult and expensive to add more memory or swap in new memory if you wanted to. Well, recently, HP made a big change in their BIOS, so their motherboards will now take XMP profiles for memory, which is fantastic. That means you can go buy just about anything off the shelf that's DDR4 in the right speed range and plug it in here, and this motherboard will recognize it in the BIOS. That's a really fantastic change. The other thing I really like is most of their parts are standard motherboard sizes, standard power supply sizes, standard mounting brackets, things of that nature. These are not proprietary like we're going to see on some of the super cheapest gaming PCs where you're not going to be able to swap anything out. So these are almost like buying from a system integrator in terms of being able to swap things around. And listen, for $2,100, you just cannot beat that for an RTX 3080. Of course, if you want to play at 4K at reduced frame rates, or you want to play at higher frame rates at 1440p, there are still some really good options around just under $2,000. Let's start off with Skytech. Skytech has three PCs that are essentially the exact same PC, they just have different cases. Let me show you the first two that I really like and the third one that's perfectly fine and typically cheaper. These are all gonna have a Ryzen 5 5600X, great, RTX 3070 with 16 gigabytes of relatively fast memory, DDR4 3200, and a 1 terabyte NVMe drive. The Chronos here simply has this case, which is a great case, by the way, in terms of airflow, got good mesh in the front, comes with plenty of ventilation. Some of these do at times come with like all-in-one liquid coolers, but typically with the 5600X, they're just using the AMD stock cooler, which is perfectly fine for a 5600X. Skytech Blaze, again, the only real difference here is the case and the price. This one's a little bit cheaper. Again, I love this mesh case, great. And the last one, which is typically the cheapest at $1,900, and sometimes you can even find it for $1,700. Overall, another good performer. I believe they mostly use micro ATX motherboards on this one. not a big deal. And of course, all the similar specs. But if you're looking to save a little bit of money, this is another good option. And again, 4K and 1440p high frame rate capable PCs. Now let's jump into 1440p capable gaming PCs. Remember, links are down in the video description. And we're going to start off with an OEM PC. Remember, the advantage of OEM PCs is that because a lot of the parts are often proprietary, they do manufacture them cheaper. You have less flexibility, but you can often get quote unquote better specs, at least on paper, for the same price. And that is definitely the case with the HP Omen 30L. Like the 3080 build that we looked at, same case, it's the 30L case with the mesh on the side or the grill on the side, front intake fan. It's got the same 5800X CPU with an all-in-one liquid cooler, but this one has an RTX 3060 Ti. Now this is a card that's capable of 1440p gaming, also high frame rates at 1080p, maybe if you want like super high refresh rate gaming for competitive shooters, Halo Infinite, Call of Duty Warzone, Battlefield 2042, those kinds of games, then this is definitely great. And this will also give you pretty decent ray tracing performance at 1440p or 1080p at medium settings. So this is a really, really good one to look at, $1,700 over at Best Buy. If you are looking for 1440p gaming in a PC that's from a system integrator that you are going to be able to pull apart to tweak with standard parts, then let me show you the Skytech Gaming Archangel. As with all of Skytech's builds, the Archangel name just pertains to this particular case, and the various build outs are what you get with it. So for this one, we have a Ryzen 5 5600X, very powerful gaming processor. Typically comes with the included box cooler from AMD. It's a stock cooler, very, very fine for 5600X gaming builds. And an RTX 3060 Ti. Again, this is a card that's capable of high refresh rate gaming at 1440p in most titles, and certainly ray tracing and other kinds of performance too, if that's what you're looking for, especially if you're looking for like a PC to play Minecraft with ray tracing. This would be a really, really good place to start. 16 gigabytes of relatively fast memory. The only thing, this case is fine. It's just a negative air pressure setup, so you have 3 exhaust fans and only 1 intake right there. And what it does is it just creates a negative pressure in the case so that it will pull in air from other places like the back panel ventilation here. Overall though, if you're looking for a good quality 1440p gaming PC that's from a system integrator, this is a good place to start. One of the advantages that the ABS lineup has, especially when it comes to the more mid-range PCs, is that they simply are able to put these together much cheaper. They sell them at Newegg as opposed to selling them on Amazon. They don't have to pay Amazon for that. So they're able to offer some steeper discounts, if you will. So while we looked at 2 PCs with very, very good specs, we can look at something with more like an i5-10400F for the CPU. Now, this is not as powerful a CPU as the ones I just showed you. However, perfectly adequate for 1440p gaming and perfectly adequate for the RTX 3060 Ti. So if you're just gaming, maybe this is more the value setup for you. This is the ABS Master. Now, this one, comes with a Thermaltake UX100 cooler. That's that RGB looking circle thing there. That's perfectly fine, much better than the included Intel stock cooler, so I like that. These cases have decent-ish airflow. Don't need a lot. These are not really high heat parts. And the one thing I do like about ABS is they often tell you what you're going to get. So they tell you that, for instance, the motherboard is definitely going to be the Gigabyte B560DS3H. That's a more budget-oriented motherboard, but it's a B560 that will allow memory overclocking, and it does come with DDR4 3000 speed memory, which is good, and that motherboard is going to allow you to clock up that memory to the full speed. Don't worry, they should clock it up for you. You shouldn't have to do anything. Overall, though, if you're looking for 1440p on more of a budget, this is definitely, especially if you're looking for ray tracing support. So this is definitely an area to look at. Here's a great 1440p, kind of mid-ranges or high-end 1080p gaming PC that I think really does it right. This is the Skytech Blaze 3 over at Amazon. It's $1,300, but again, you can check the box here to save an extra $65. So it's more like $1,235, which is a great price for this. A couple of things I really like is I love that they are going to include a budget tower air cooler. These are better coolers than the downdraft coolers. You won't have any thermal problems with this as long as it's installed properly, right? And it comes with an RX 6600 XT. That's an AMD card. That Isn't quite to the 3060 Ti level of performance, but it's above the 3060 level, just slightly. So you can think of it that way. Ray tracing performance, not quite as impressive, but again, if you're just playing games and you just want like something great for Call of Duty Warzone and you're on a budget of about $1,200 to $1,300, this is a really, really good option. i5-10400F, again, not a super high-end processor, but certainly a 6-core modern Intel processor that's capable of playing all the latest games and driving this the RX 6600 XT. This one does come with a 1 terabyte NVMe. Those are some of the other differences, for instance, between models is some will come with a little bit more storage space, some will come with a little bit less. This 1 terabyte's about standard, and that's what I would expect, somewhere between 500 gigabytes and 1 terabyte. So this is a really, really good value right now. Just to close out our 1440p gaming PCs, let's go with an RTX 3060 gaming. I know some people really, really want an NVIDIA graphics card, especially if you're doing productivity work. Some people just really, really focused on, for instance, the NVENC encoder that comes with the RTX 3060. If you are, this is another good deal. $1,300 i5-10400F, very similar to the 3060 build that we showed earlier, except this is the Deep Cool Matrix 55 case. This is a glass panel on the front. However, it uses 2 side slits, one on either side, as you can see here, for ventilation. Not my favorite, but with 3 fans here, it's going to pull in enough air to be absolutely fine. Overall, though, 500 gigabyte SSD, 16 gigabytes of relatively fast memory. And like the other ones, it's going to use a Gigabyte B560 DS3H, a relatively budget B560 motherboard, but a high, decent quality one. If you're looking for an NVIDIA graphics card at kind of the lower to mid tier of 1440p, for $1,300 over ABS, this is a really, really good deal. Let's jump down to 1080p capable gaming PCs. And remember, links are down in the video description for all of this, and I continue to update that as these deals change, because right now I'm seeing some deals that we haven't seen for quite a while, but generally the kinds of PCs you're looking for here, they range from about $1,300 down to about $900. And at the upper end, we're looking for graphics cards like the AMD Radeon RX 6600. This is not the XT card, this is the non-XT card, but great 1080p levels of gaming. This comes with 16 gigabytes. Remember, we want at least 16 gigabytes. That's critical to not hamper our gaming performance. I will show you a couple 8 gigabyte ones on the very low end. I would recommend getting something like this with an AMD Ryzen 5 3600, very capable processor. I don't love the airflow in this case, but again, these are lower heat parts and I'm not that concerned about it. I have seen this setup and I've reviewed it and it seems to work just fine. Overall, for $1,150, I would buy this one like right now if you want 1080p gaming, because that's a phenomenal price. I would typically expect this to be at least $100 or $200 more. If we jump over to Amazon, we can see a very similar PC. This one has an RTX 2060. That's the older generation of the NVIDIA graphics cards. Slightly lower performance than the 6600, but very, very similar. And overall, right now, for $1,092 from iBuyPower, something that's more appropriately priced is like the Skytech Shadow. This is more often what you see. i5-10400F gaming processor capable of playing all of the latest games with a GTX 1660 Super. 1660 Super is definitely a 1080p card, except in super easy to play titles. So I would target 1080p for everything here. Lower performance than the graphics cards we've looked at, the RTX 2060 and the RX 6600, by quite a bit, but still very, very capable at 1080p. Relatively fast memory here, 16 gigabytes of 3200. Similar case to the ones that I've shown you in the past, uses a negative air pressure setup. This one uses the included box cooler for the Intel. I don't love the Intel stock cooler, but it will be perfectly fine. And if it bothers you at some point, actually replacing the CPU cooler is much easier than most people think. $1,129, and let me just show you, here's a similar spec'd out one. This is the Skytech Blaze 2. This I really do like the airflow. Despite it having glass here, there's actually a really large cutout on either side of the glass, allow plenty of airflow. This is a micro ATX case, so it's actually going to be smaller than the other ones. And this uses an i5-10400F with a Cooler Master cooler or similar downdraft cooler. GTX 1660 Super, similar performance to the one that we just saw. With the $60 off coupon here, remember, always check the coupon when you go to Amazon. This would be a really, really good price at about, $1,140. So let's go through some of the kind of PCs that you should absolutely avoid. And this is typically you start finding these PCs at the 1080p budget level of around $1,000. So for instance, we've got the CyberPower PC, Gamer Extreme, whatever they call this thing. Specs on the surface look pretty good. i5-11400, hey, that's good, right, Jason? It's got an RTX 2060, 500 gigabyte SSD, a little small, but that's okay. What's the problem with this? It only comes with 8 gigabytes of memory. Now listen, for $1,000, you might say, hey, that's a really good price. And what I'll do is I will buy this PC and I will simply find out what stick of memory that is. And I will buy the identical stick of memory and I'll plug it into the correct slot. And then I'll have one with 16 gigabytes. And if you know how to do that, then you might be able to take advantage of a deal like this. But if you don't, then I would warn you away from this because you are going to be getting a PC that's going to be severely gimped in the memory department, especially the fact it's only single channel. So this is one example of a PC that I would avoid. Another one I would avoid is these kind of trap PCs. They look great, right? Hey, Skytech, aren't you saying that Skytech makes good PCs? Yes, they also make some PC configurations that I absolutely would not buy. Everybody does. There's no such thing as a pre-built gaming PC maker that makes all good PCs. That's just not the market we live in. So this is for $900. What are you getting? You're getting a 4-core, 8-thread CPU. It would be okay, except that we're getting it with a GTX 1650, not a 1650 Super, a 1650, which has very low performance to it. 500 gigabyte drive and only 8 gigabytes of memory. And I guarantee you it's going to be single channel, even despite the fact they show 2 sticks of memory in there. These are stock photos. So this is definitely a PC that I would not buy under any circumstances. Then I think the worst offenders are PCs like this, that on the face of it, they look super cool. $679. Yeah, what do you get for that? Starts off pretty good. i5-10400F, that's a 6-core processor. Unfortunately, they're going to use a B460 motherboard, which I tried to warn you away from, with 8 gigabytes of memory. Now, that in and of itself wouldn't be the worst thing, and 256 gigabytes of storage is very small, but they're going to give you a GT 1030, which is a garbage tier graphics card. So you're going to get this thing and you're not going to be able to really play any games at anything other than not even 1080p. I mean, super low settings in most games. And you're going to wonder what the heck you just spent $679 on if you just spent another $50 or $70 or $100, and I'll show you some in a second. You would have gotten a much better PC. So these are the kinds that I want to warn you away from, even though this thing looks great. It's got an included cooler, all that kind of stuff, but the specs are terrible. So just want to warn you away from these. So what do you do if you have less than $1,000, significantly less than $1,000 to spend on a gaming PC? Are you just out of luck? Not necessarily. Yes, we're in a silicon and graphics card shortage right now, and that has driven up the price of gaming PCs significantly, but there is still some hope if you want something now, especially if you're just looking to do something like play Roblox, you're looking to play 1080p low settings on most games, low to medium settings. You can get something like the HP Pavilion Gaming Desktop. Now, there's a lot of different configurations for this PC, and some of them are not good, and it is hard to tell at times, but I will tell you this is a good one. This has a Ryzen 5 5600G processor that actually has its own integrated graphics, but you're not going to use that because it comes with an AMD Radeon RX 5500. That is an OEM-only graphics card. You can't buy it off the shelf, but 1080p levels of gaming performance, fine. And this one comes with 16 gigabytes of memory, albeit with a smaller SSD, 256 gigabytes. If you're willing to spend quite a bit more, then you can bump up to 512 gigs. But now, of course, you're talking about almost spending as much as some of the PCs I just showed you that have significantly better specs. So maybe this is something you buy now, you play games on, you just kind of manage that SSD, and you spend $50 in 6 months, and you get a bigger SSD to put in this thing. It's actually not hard to put a SATA SSD in something like this. This is one particular option. Then if you want to go down down even further or need to go down even further, the next thing I would recommend is dropping off 8 gigabytes of memory. We hate to do that, especially because these are OEM PCs and they are very challenging to upgrade the memory to. And then if you're absolutely in dire straits and you want something that will play some games, look, this would play League of Legends probably just fine. At low settings on 1080p, you'd get good frame rate. You can play all those kinds of casual, easy to play games. You could probably do well on Valorant on a setup like this. This is an i3-10100. It's a 4-core, 8-thread processor, 256 gigabytes of SSD space. Again, not a lot. Maybe just manage it really well, and then in a year from now, you can upgrade it to maybe a 500 gigabyte. But it does only come with the 8 gigabytes of memory, and that's the challenging things on these OEM PCs is upgrading the memory in them. But for $729, maybe this is all you need. I hope this video really helped you find the pre-built gaming PC you're looking for. If you got value, remember to give it a like. It makes a big difference to the channel. And of course, let me know down in the comments, are there questions that you have? We do try and get back to everybody if we can. And with that, we'll catch you on the next one.